I'm Stephanie Ruhle. In a brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, President Trump's approval rating has hit 39%. That is the lowest mark in the poll's history for any modern president ending his first year. But 78% of Republicans approve of the president's job so far. I want to bring in Niall Ferguson. He is a historian and author of the new book, The Square and the Tower. Niall, I want to walk through this. What are the driving factors behind Trump's historically low approval rating? And can't you say lots of people don't like President Trump, and they didn't like him when they voted for him, but they still voted for him?
That's right. I mean, as far back as you can go with polls, and that takes you all the way back to Harry Truman, that there's never been a president who started with such a low approval rating. And, of course, it got worse over the 12 months since his inauguration. Only very slight improvement in recent weeks. What's the story here? I think it's the story of a relative political outsider who was able to use, apart from anything else, new technology to hijack the Republican Party, win the nomination against the Republican establishment, and then run an extraordinarily unorthodox campaign, which provoked and alienated as many people as it attracted. And yet, because of the way that the ground game of the Trump campaign was played, secured victory through the Electoral College. So, I mean, I don't think it's at all mysterious that President Trump is a relatively unpopular president. He ran a very unorthodox and inflammatory campaign, a polarizing campaign, and in some ways he's a classic populist, the kind of figure we've seen in American politics in the past. And populists do have this difficulty that they are polarizing, and therefore they create almost as many enemies as they win friends.
In a Boston Globe op-ed, you highlight similarities between Clinton and Trump in their first year. You say a painful transition, failure on health care reform, narrowly winning on taxes, fixation on the financial market, and excessive involvement of family members and lousy press coverage. Are you really saying that Trump is the new Clinton?
No, I'm not. What I'm making very clear is that their personalities couldn't be more different, and I say this in the piece. Just take the issue of race. Really, they could not be more different as individuals. But sometimes I think that our media have become excessively obsessed with personalities, and I can see why. The personality of Donald Trump is larger than life. He wants us to talk about his personality endlessly. It's kind of what gets him up in the morning. But, you know, politics and history are about more than just individual personalities. The structure of politics matters. The Constitution of the United States set up so that the individual who holds the presidency is not all-powerful. And the point I make in the piece is that if you just forget about the different personalities and look at the structure of politics in the first year of Trump and the first year of Clinton, they have a lot in common. And that's because,
Neil,
regardless of who the president is, Stephanie, the same kinds of problems arise inevitably. The people who were good in the campaign turn out to be not so good when it comes to government. And then the president has to deal with these people in Congress, the professional politicians of the Beltway, and it always comes down to the haggling that we've got so accustomed to. You know, you've spent part of the morning talking about government shutdowns. Donald Trump did not invent government shutdowns. They were a feature of the 1990s, as well as, of course, of the Obama administration.
But, Neil, to simply say these are different personalities, there's one thing to say personality, but we're talking about common decency and disgraceful, repugnant behavior in the highest office in the land. So should we not be concerned about the impact on our culture and our future and the hate rising in this country? I mean, look at the market. The market is basically saying, words don't matter. I like these policies. And when you talk to Trump supporters, they actually say, I don't like how he behaves, I don't like what he has to say, but I like the policies. Isn't that short-sighted? Should we not add any element of thoughtfulness?
Well, Stephanie, we began this conversation talking about his low approval ratings. I would be worried if the president was enormously popular, and if people said, I absolutely love the way that he uses profane language, or I'm delighted to hear he's had affairs with porn stars that have been hushed up. But that's not what's happening. Whatever the markets may be saying, the opinion polls are telling a pretty clear story, and that's why I'm not in a state of great panic in the way that I fear some academics have been over the last 12 months. I don't think the United States is descending into tyranny. I think, in fact, the Constitution is doing pretty much what it's set up to do. The fact Fathers did not write into the Constitution that the President of the United States had to be a saint, that he couldn't possibly be a racist, that he couldn't be a sexist. That is not in the Constitution. In fact, the Founding Fathers said and knew that it was quite likely that a populist demagogue could at one point become president. Alexander Hamilton talked about this. It was one of the reasons they set up the separation of powers. And so I'd say, on the one hand, American political culture seems to be pretty much turned off. The majority of people are turned off by Donald Trump, and the Constitution is constraining him.
But at Harvard University, if a high school student gets a perfect SAT score and is a valedictorian of their class, Harvard doesn't admit them if they behave like an animal.
We're not talking about running a university here. We're talking about running the United States of America.
And shouldn't running the United States of America have a higher standard?
Well, listen, you take this to the Founding Fathers, Stephanie. Remember, they didn't require the president to be a saint, and very few presidents have been saints. John F. Kennedy wasn't exactly a saint on the kind of issues we're talking about. Now, let's not freak out here. I agree with you that decency is regularly affronted by Donald Trump's utterances and behavior. But luckily, our political culture is mostly appalled by that, and our Constitution is set up to contain him and prevent this from becoming a tyranny. So chill.
No need to tell me to chill, Neil. I'm not freaking out. But thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Condescension, not welcome. Coming up, countdown to a shutdown. We just got words moments ago. 2 key members of the Trump administration will hold a news conference in about 30 minutes. They'll update us on a potential for a government shutdown. We're going to bring